Okay, so let's go into the techniques and talk about them. So you've got a handout on this, so let's get into it. I think it's just called Attitudes, Techniques, and Methods, something like that. And so these are just really very fundamental ways to think about how to be more effective, all right? And so the first one, be practical and mystical simultaneously. So that's practical mysticism, you know. For a long time those seem to be antithetical terms, but we have to synthesize them and live them together. Number two, work under impression from the larger life. Now that's really an interesting term, under impression, because, well, we saw the drawing of being under impression from the hierarchy, but there's actually a clue to this in the study of esoteric astrology. Because in esoteric astrology, the Tibetan talks about, he says he'll use the statement, a disciple is born in a sign, but then in other places he'll say the disciple is born under a sign. When he's saying in a sign, he's talking about your birth sign. But when he's talking about under a sign, he's talking about the rising sign. And the rising sign is the sign of the soul's higher potential. And so to really know your rising sign and know its higher meaning is saying something about how to be under impression from the ashram. That's so why it's so important to know your rising sign. If you can get it, you have to have your birth time to get it, or roughly, but that rising sign is really important. So whatever your rising sign is, what it's saying is that the soul and the ashram will try to shape patterns of consciousness around the intuitions from the ashram along according to the sign's nature. So if you have, say, Capricorn rising, it means that the soul will try to, or the ashram will utilize Capricornian patterns of consciousness to try to shape influence in your mind, thoughts and influences in your mind. It's really useful to know. Actually, there's another place in the chart too called the midheaven that can also point to some of this. So, by the way, I'm curious, how many of you do not know your rising sign? She's just up there like this. You think? Okay, all right. See, it's the sign that's rising at the eastern horizon at the moment of your birth. And because it's rising, it symbolizes the soul's rising intention. And so, in a way, it's really very much related to a higher potentiality. The Tibetan calls it this way. He says your birth sign is the sign of probabilities. The rising sign is the sign of possibilities. Possibilities. Depending upon if you rise to the occasion and can really start sensing that higher patterning, then it's a real possibility for you to be more effective on behalf of the ashram. Okay? Number 3, see all things as evolving incrementally. So, step by step, step by step, step by step. By the way, that doesn't mean that all steps of evolution are equal. Because there are, you know that idea called, you've heard the book The Tipping Point? Yeah. You know, so there is a tipping point where you can have a radical leap as well. But between tipping points, it's incremental. You know, so yeah. Number 4, recognize all parties, creeds, religions, and governments as evolving structures of thought that either are supportive of the future or resistant to it. In other words, it's a new kind of idea, but think of these social institutions as entities evolving in their consciousness, and that there's just a bunch of faces attached to it. So if you look at the business world, it's an entity in its own right with a bunch of faces attached to it. And that it's trying to evolve to a higher order, but just like you and I, its lower nature often is stronger than its higher nature at this point. It's kind of what I think Sean yesterday had brought that up too, and it's this idea that, yeah, the lower nature is often stronger, but it's important to realize that that's in the physics of consciousness, that the lower nature will win the day at first, and slowly the higher nature will start to take precedence, but it's slow. So, number 5. Oh, here it is. Look at who we just. Isn't that funny? We just believe that there is no hurry, and yet there is no time to lose. We just talked about that. So, what does the Tibetan mean by that, though? I mean, let's get serious about it for a minute. What does that mean?
Don't rush it, but move at the same time.
Okay, don't rush it, but move at the same time.
Take any opportunity.
Take opportunity. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Something about not being impulsive.
Not being what?
Impulsive.
Yeah, not being impulsive, and also being recognized that the time is actually an asset that can be used to be of better service to the larger whole. And so it's not about wasting time either. It's about being sensitive to using it. Right timing is part of it. It's also this idea to use time and not be used by time in a strange kind of way, you see. Okay, 6. Take positive note of all movements grounded in a yearning toward unity. So, we look out there. Where's some things happening there? People are coming together for good things. Note it. 7. Always begin service activity from a subjective and soulful position. In other words, align first, then serve. Sometimes we do it the other way. It's serve and then, align. It's the different, when I do the white magic workshop, I have those gestures. Do you remember the gestures?
Yes.
The difference between, there's a difference between this versus this. It's sort of, I'm going to serve, I better check in, versus check in, I'm going to serve. Yeah, okay. All right. Be guided by the ear, outwardly attentive and inwardly receptive. We actually talked about that, right? 9, view all formulations of truth as partial and as temporary ideas suited to the evolutionary needs of the time. It's a really important concept. In other words, what's your take on that? Nothing is written in stone. Although, if you go to Newgrange, it apparently is.
Or once it was your kingdom, and then it can become. You were saying that last time. Something that was once your kingdom can become your prison because you grow.
Yeah, that which is your temple today will become your prison tomorrow. Yeah. So that means that that idea of know where the limits of an idea are at. Where are they at? And that no idea is sweeping. Every idea has its boundaries of application. Okay. 10, act as a balancing agent between oppositional forces in the world. So you think about your own life for a minute and what your service is. What do you do? What do you do out there? So what are the two forces that you are most suited to balance and harmonize? And usually they're oppositional forces, often. I look on your face, I can tell you, I know what you're thinking, But I mean, it's for some people, it's how education is handled and the needs of students, Can anybody think of another example of?
I'm dealing with traditional stuff, or traditional stuff, and new movement into new areas.
Okay, same idea. Often one is more entrenched in a past rhythm, and one is trying to advocate a new paradigm, and they are often very intolerant of each other, and yet the past actually has some golden threads of truth in it that have to be acknowledged and carried into the other. Remember what the Tibetan says about this in the book, A Treatise on White Magic, Rule 10, there's what is called the 15 counsels. And the second counsel is the one I remember the most. And I've probably shared it with you before, but it bears repeating. And that is, find the golden thread of truth within illusion. Find the golden thread of truth within the point of view that you are opposed to, that is the old idea, because there's something about that that has to be carried into the future. That's like sometimes people say, oh, we're going into Aquarius, drop Pisces, go into Aquarius. It's not dropping Pisces, you take the best essence of Pisces and bring it into Aquarius. You see? A good exercise, though, and it's one that I struggle with, but it's a really good exercise, is whatever your bias is, and we all, our personalities have these biases, they could be political, for instance. Look at the opposite view that you're opposed, you have a strong opposition to, and ask yourself, what is the golden thread in that opposite view that I may not be attending well enough to? Because there will be something there. You know? Some sacred principle that is
What the person is most passionate about, listen carefully to that.
Say again?
What the person is most passionate about in their statements, what they're really passionate about, listen carefully to that.
Yeah, and
that probably is the kernel of what's driving them.
there's something in there. That's the truth of it. Yeah, the so-called sacred principle. What is the sacred principle? It might be greatly distorted. Like always there's a sacred principle in something. An example is, let's say you got somebody that's very, very egotistical. A very egotistical person. So you have egoism very strong. Well, that's actually a great distortion. But what is the sacred principle that is being distorted, and the distortion is what we call egoism? It's something called the principle of identity. So the principle of identity is as sacred as the principle of love. You are sacred as an entity, as a spark of life. You are sacred because you exist. You have essential identity. But a distortion of that arises as personality egoism. But the core is the sacredness of your identity. You're a part of the one life. The distortion is separative, egotistical manifestation of it. The opposite is also true. Low self-esteem is also a distortion of the sacred principle of identity. So a lot of times it's about looking out at the world and looking at what are these patterns out here, and trying to get at what is the sacred principle that is being distorted, that is so apparent to us. What is the hidden principle? You know? What is let me just see something here for a minute. Let's see if I have this here. A good example would be in the Labors of Hercules, which I just did a presentation in Galway on. In the Scorpio labor, there is the so-called nine-headed Hydra. Do you recall that story? Some of you have read that, right? And the nine-headed Hydra, here we go. The nine-headed Hydra has, each head represents a glamour, a distortion. Yeah, the heads of the Hydra represent shadow issues. Okay? So just a couple to give you an example. So we have greed. So greed is a shadow issue. What's the sacred principle that's a distortion of? It's the sacred principle of right utilization of resources.
Protection of resources as well.
Right utilization of resources, or protection of resources. What's the sacred fear? Fear. Fear is another great thing. That's a distortion. What's the sacred principle that it is disguising or hiding or distorting? You know, it's the rightful use of caution in life. In other words, there's nothing. Caution actually is a wise thing. Fear is a distortion of that sacred principle. Ambition. What's the sacred principle in ambition? Underlying it is the rightful utilization of power. That's a sacred principle. Power is the first right. Power is but it should be a rightful application of it. But ambition becomes a distorted, individualistic, egotistical expression of it. Pride is a distortion. What's the sacred principle? A healthy self-respect, the rightful sense of self-respect. So, anyway, those are just an example. That's what I'm saying when I'm saying that always look for what is the duality, what is the thing that is behind the thing you're looking at, and what is that thing, how is it being distorted by the form? Just like you can see that in people, even ourselves. The soul is sacred. The personality is a distorted expression of it. So when we talk about the glamours, we say, okay, the second ray. What's the glamour of the second ray? The glamour of the second ray is, well, one of the glamours is fear of saying no. Okay, suddenly I see a lot of heads nodding. But that's just a distortion that arises from the form. You see? So that's why in this philosophy, when you study esoteric psychology, you put a lot of time looking at the glamours. Because the glamours are the distortions, and there's a whole list of them for all the rays. Every ray has its own glamours. That's the distorted shell, but the sacred principle is the ray itself at the core. Anyway, so let's go on. Sorry, that was a diversion, but I thought, let's do it. Okay. Where am I here? Number 11? Stand in the middle as a linking agent between all horizontal dualities. So that's a little bit of what I was saying earlier, but there's a difference between horizontal dualities and vertical dualities. Okay? Vertical duality, or horizontal, are two opposite forces that actually are equal at where they stand, but one tends to incline upward and the other tends to incline downward. And as a disciple, you want to be standing in the middle as a balancing agent to reconcile that duality. So you stand in the middle. But when it comes to a vertical duality, you must favor the higher pole because this is spirit versus matter. This is the future versus the past. And if you harmonize the horizontal dualities, that's what's needed in order to rise to a higher pole on the vertical duality. So for instance, as in America, we have this great polarity between Republicans and Democrats. From a truly occult perspective, both of those are equal. I know, and each side thinks the other is less than themselves, but actually each is equal, and each holds a sacred principle. The Democratic Party in the United States is holding the sacred principle of concern for the welfare of the whole. The Republican Party is holding the sacred principle of freedom and individual liberty. Both of those are actually sacred principles, but both of them have distorted shells around them. In that context, we stand in the middle as a bridge. That's why, by the way, the Tibetan says, get this, and this is sometimes hard to fathom, but he does say, even eliminate from your language the words pro or anti this, anti that, because even those words are divisive. Is that the rain? Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Okay. Oh, here it is. Look at that. I just said to number 12. Take no sides and do not use pro or anti-language in your communications. They are divisive terms and do not promote unity. There it was. I guess I had a premonition. 13. Stand on a practical platform that advocates the sacredness of the human spirit and the evolution of life toward greater states of unity. 14. Bring order out of chaos by remaining centered in soulful certitude. Pardon me?
I like that.
Yeah, centered in soulful certitude. Because you know how it is. You can get into it can be very chaotic in here, and then all of a sudden you find yourself lost in the chaos. It's now you're kind of in part of the mix of craziness. But how well can we hold ourselves in a kind of background observer, and That's really important in the world of discipleship. Can you be the observer even when things are pretty crazy and, it's stressful? It's not easy, but it's what has to. See, and that's what an initiate is able to do, is always hold the observer position. A disciple, like most of us would be, you're able to do it sometimes. Sometimes you're able to do it, and sometimes you're not. And that's good that what happens is you start to learn on the path that the whole story is to learn how to be in two places at one time. Interestingly, there's the part of us that engages. We're thinking, we're feeling, we're acting. That's the one place that comes easy. But then to be able to have another place back here where you're always saying, interesting, where you're observing, you're attending. And you're not just observing the outer world, but you're observing your thoughts and feelings in relationship to the outer world. That's not so easy.
No.
Not so easy.
You'd rather be an ascended master to do that.
Pardon me?
You'd want to be an ascended master to be able to do it well.
To do it all the time, you would be, in any situation, you'd be a master. You'd be a master. Yeah. Because remember, that's what a master is. One who has mastered his or her relationship to the form, which means they've they've come to such a point where they are never identified with the form any longer.
So we're apprentices.
We're apprentices. That's what the path is. It's an apprenticeship, really. That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look at another one here. Let's see. Look for the golden thread of truth in all things. I mentioned that earlier, right? 16. Link people of goodwill and thus create a synergistic effect.